4. The Stranger's Return. "My goodness, you look as if you've been ravished." The feminine voice stopped Charlotte cold. Half blind from the chandelier's light, she had returned to the sea of familiar faces that would swallow her up with the ease of the evening tide. She had returned to civilization and sanity. Charlotte stood panting. She knew she must look frightful. Self-consciously she attempted to straighten her skirt. She could see the bemused smiles behind the flutter of fans as heads dipped together in shocked whispers. That was all she needed. She turned back to the familiar voice. Lydia stood a hair's breadth away, her hands crossed in exasperation over her jewel-encrusted bodice. Charlotte could feel her own body deflate like one of Mrs. Given's soufflés. Her knees almost buckled with an enormous sigh. "Oh, Lydia, if you only knew what I have been through. I have escaped the clutches of not one madman, but 2. I dare say they are at one another's throats this very second." Lydia's mouth pursed. "On the eve of your betrothal you have men fighting? I must say, even I am impressed. In my estimation, a woman hasn't really lived until she is responsible for at least one duel, though I must admit I had my doubts about you." As she scrutinized Charlotte's rumpled figure, her bemused smile faded to a frown of genuine dismay. "But, my dear, what have you been doing, rolling in the mud? You are a positive disaster. We must fix you before tongues start wagging." Lydia began to guide Charlotte around the ballroom, skirting the swirling couples. "But, Lydia, I must talk to you at once." Charlotte stumbled over a drooping hem. "Indeed, what an interesting dialogue we will have if you choose to stand here as your gown falls apart," Lydia replied tartly, as she pushed Charlotte towards the stairs. As the two emerged from the noisy throng, heads turned and eyebrows rose in speculation. Already the hum of conversation rose in anticipation of a scandal. Charlotte tripped over the first step. "But don't you understand? Something has happened. Something terrible." She clasped at her shifting bodice as Lydia pulled her into an anteroom at the top of the stairs. Satisfied that they were finally alone, Lydia turned with a sober scowl. "Now what are you going on about? And why do I suspect that this grand drama of yours includes Derek?" Charlotte groaned miserably as she collapsed on a settee. "Who else but? And now a beast has been added to the list." Lydia arched a speculative eyebrow. Charlotte bolted upright in exasperation. "Lydia, I am quite serious. If you had only seen him, he was terrifying. I was in the gazebo and this giant appeared from the darkness. He was so huge and threatening that I lost my bearings and fell." "Goodness, and what did this giant do?" He picked me up." "Oh, he is a beast." Lydia's sarcasm was not lost on Charlotte. "You don't understand. It was the way he did it, the way he spoke." Lydia paused, quizzical eyes narrowing. Charlotte gazed sightless into the shadows. "It was as if he knew me." Shivering, she looked up. "Oh, Lydia, you should have seen his face. It was the devil himself. I have this terrible feeling." She peered into the darkness. "He wants something." The crowd murmured and the orchestra faltered. Lydia stepped out to the balcony railing and looked down. "Well, my dear, your beast has arrived. We shall find out soon enough." Charlotte ran to Lydia's side, tipping her body over the balustrade. Below the ballroom was a swirling kaleidoscope of colour, all except for the man in black. He stood out like a raven among so many gaily coloured sparrows. He seemed to be inspecting the room with predatory curiosity. "My God, Charlotte, what kind of creature have you summoned?" Lydia's voice was hushed. He stopped in the centre of the room, scanning the sea of faces with unswerving intensity, looking for his quarry, no doubt. Her fingers tightened around the burnished wood. Who would it be? Abruptly his jaw lifted as if sniffing the air, then turned. He had found his victim. Looking neither right nor left, he strode through the crowd as if destiny itself was leading him. He pushed past the clusters of clucking dowagers, past the dancers, to the unsuspecting clutch of men, military braid, winking in the intense light. "No!" Charlotte choked back a hushed cry. He strode directly to Sir Hubert Earnshaw, Lord of Highgate Manor. Predator and prey stood eye to eye. Charlotte could see her father peer over his spectacles with curiosity, then horror. He was clearly stunned. She could tell even at this distance. Words were exchanged. Head dropping in defeat, Earnshaw turned to the stairs, the stranger looming behind him like a forbidding shadow. As they mounted the stairs, Charlotte lurched forward, just as Lydia captured her arm. "But I must go to him," Charlotte protested. "Not yet. Wait. See what unfolds." "But he is in danger." Lydia pulled her back into the anteroom, just as her father reached the top of the stairs, the stranger at his elbow. Charlotte pressed herself behind the doorway, hidden in the shadows, Lydia standing back. As the two men passed, Charlotte could detect the faint aroma of tobacco and clove. "Shall we retire to the library?" Her father's voice trembled at this futile attempt at propriety. "If you wish." The stranger's voice was deep, a rumble of warning. "But you already know why I am here. You know what I want." Earnshaw laughed, a hollow, choking sound of defeat. "Yes, I know what you want." They moved along the balustrade circling the ballroom, Charlotte spying out after them. Although she could no longer hear, she marvelled at his composure. From a distance, her father remained Earnshaw, Lord of Highgate Manor, accompanied by whom? A visiting dignitary? Charlotte's heart sank. No, it was surely a demon at her father's shoulder. She pulled away from Lydia's grasp. Long shadows flickered from the library. Her father was hunched as if to ward off the stranger's words. Suddenly he looked up, glaring into the dark, hooded eyes. "No, that I will not do, sir. Never." Then the stranger did something that sent a sick shiver into the pit of Charlotte's stomach. His face moulded into a hard, cruel smile. She knew this was for the moment. She knew this was the moment he had waited for. His voice was low, taunting. "Yes, you will. Yes, you will. You will do exactly as I say. You will come." "And why should I?" "You will come, Lord Earnshaw, because I say so." The stranger's voice flared to a snarl. "You will come because you know I will destroy you if you do not." Charlotte could not bear another tortuous second. She rushed into the glare of chandeliers. Anger and fear gripped her body and her voice. It was little more than a gasp. "Who do you think you are, threatening my father?" They turned, stared. Earnshaw mutely shook his head in despair, but the stranger smiled. A heavy eyebrow lifted with amusement. "Why, Miss Earnshaw, we meet again." She gazed into a cynical mask. His gaze swept the line of her bodice. "I gather you returned to your father untouched." Charlotte reddened. "I asked you a question." She moved to her father, but did not reach him. The stranger blocked her path, casting a net of darkness over her. Her gaze adjusted to the black brocade vest, swept up the massive chest, and rested on the heavy jaw. She forced her eyes to meet his. They were cold and black as a pit, and as fathomless. There was no warmth, no humanity. "Indeed you did." His voice was low and mocking. His hand rose to her face, and she flinched at the invasion as he gently touched her hair. His fingers deftly produced a leaf. Suddenly, his gaze flickered up beyond her, to Lydia, standing in the doorway. Their eyes met in challenge. Then abruptly Lydia turned, fleeing from this strange and unwanted encounter. The leaf fell from the stranger's fingers. His manner was instantly brusque and indifferent. "Let us say that I am an old acquaintance with unfinished business." He gave Earnshaw a cursory glance, then turned back to the stairway. "You will excuse me. I am sure you have much to discuss." Charlotte was incensed at the cold-blooded arrogance of the man. "How dare you trespass on our property?" "Trespass?" The giant turned slowly, his eyes fixing on hers with a flicker of amusement. "Not only was I expected, Miss Earnshaw, I was most certainly the guest of honour." He turned and silently descended the mahogany steps, as readily as Lucifer entered the gates of hell. Charlotte wheeled to face her father. Her voice trembled with outrage. "You said nothing!" Earnshaw wrung his hands against Charlotte's onslaught. "My dear girl, my dear, dear girl, what did he mean? Guest of honour? You were expecting him?" "Yes, damn him." Earnshaw touched the letter in his pocket with shaking fingers. "But not now. Not yet. You were supposed to be married first." "Are you saying that this betrothal, my marriage, is because of this villain?" Charlotte's voice rose to an incredulous croak. Earnshaw's words tumbled in a miserable torrent. "You must believe me. It was to protect you, you and Fiona, to save you from him. Now it is too late." His eyes were beseeching as he clasped his daughter's hands in his own. "My own darling girl, please forgive me. I must return to Africa." His legs buckled, sinking into the settee. Charlotte shook her head with bewilderment as she pulled away. "No, you cannot. It will kill you. You have said it yourself." "That is a risk I must take." He lowered his head in shame. "The choice has been taken from me." She could not bear it. To see her father cowed like this. She knew what she had to do. "Not if I have anything to say about it." Before her father could utter a word of protest, Charlotte started for the stairs, then groaned aloud. She stood at the head of the balustrade, looking down at the baleful figure of Fiona, who rose imperiously from the steps. On her heels stormed Derek. "There she is!" Fiona shrilled as her fan whipped the air. "I told you she'd be hiding up here." Her disapproving scowl flicked over Charlotte's gown. "Guilt is written all over her." Charlotte stiffened at the insult, but bit back her scornful retort. She wanted to snatch that dreadful fan and throw it back into her sister's face. But not now. She was already wasting precious time. She tried to move. "I have no idea what you are talking about, sister, so if you will allow me to pass." Fiona's wide skirts proved to be more than an effective blockade. Her bosom puffed with indignation. "Oh, now she plays the innocent, as if you didn't know that your poor fiancé was brutally attacked by a murderous scoundrel while defending your honour." Fiona turned back to Derek with a pitying gaze of adoration. Derek looked every part of the beleaguered knight. A soft bandage was wrapped around the knuckles of one hand, and a massive bruise was beginning to discolour his right eye. Derek fixed Charlotte with a bone-chilling scowl. "I myself tended his wounds." Fiona's gaze was fixed on him with sympathy and something less subtle, longing. She placed a possessive hand on his shoulder. "Then I should think him most fortunate indeed." Charlotte returned Derek's gaze with open challenge. "Why does he need me?" Fiona was upon her, pushing her face into her sister's. "How dare you insult such a gentleman? Must you dishonour him as well as your family? Must you dishonour him as well as your family?" "Enough!" Earnshaw had risen from the settee. His voice firm belied the bloodless knuckles that clutched the wall. "Remember, you are speaking of your sister. She deserves no less than your devotion and respect." "Respect!" Fiona's voice rose to a screech. She swung her fan accusingly at Charlotte. "She deserves nothing. Ask her why she has behaved in such a scandalous manner, why she was found alone in the garden with a man, and not just any man, but a stranger and a blackguard." Charlotte turned to meet her father's horrified gaze. Fiona pressed on. "Poor Lord Galway was forced to defend her honour. And on the night of his engagement, not only has she most certainly dishonoured herself, but she has disgraced us all." Her voice was harsh and triumphant as she levelled a withering eye on her sister. "Charlotte, is this true?" Earnshaw's voice was incredulous, wounded. "Papa, you don't understand." Charlotte could bear anything but this. She pushed past Fiona's smirking face, Derrick's cold glare. She had to escape or else she would go mad. She rushed to the stairs, skirts gathered in her hands, as she plunged down the mahogany steps to freedom. The iron grip on her elbow could have done it, but it was the amused sneer that stopped her in mid-step. "Now I will have to marry you, my dear, if nothing more than to save your family's honour." Charlotte looked up. Derrick stood on the step above her, looking down with a satisfied, superior smile. What better time to announce our nuptials than now? He released his grip, then stretched out his hand to her. "Come, my dear. I am sure that in time I will find it in my heart to forgive you, as I am sure you will prove to be a most obedient wife. Besides," Derrick's voice lowered, "I myself am eager to finish what our interfering interloper began." He cleared his throat. "It is best for all of us if you stop fighting and accept your rightful place." His voice ground to silence as his eyes slid past her. At the foot of the stairs stood the stranger. He was alone, a black, dominating spectre below them, waiting. He lifted a hand. "May I have the waltz?" His hair, flowing and black, shimmered beneath the chandeliers. He was terrible and foreboding, and in that instant in Charlotte's eyes, he was her salvation. She pulled away from Derrick and ran down the stairs, meeting the dark gaze. She lifted her hand to the stranger's, allowed him to enfold it within his own, and lead her down to the ballroom. Charlotte barely heard Derrick's furious oath, hardly noticed the shocked faces of dancers that parted around them. She only felt the warmth of the broad palm on her waist, the heat emanating from his body. The strains of a waltz drifted over them. "Do you often need rescuing, Miss Earnshaw?" The stranger looked down into her face, allowing a faint smile to curl at his lips. His voice flowed over her, caressing and teasing. "You are impertinent, sir. I hardly need your interference. I could have easily handled the situation myself." Charlotte kept her eyes downcast, but she could feel the heat of his gaze upon her, and the wicked humour in his voice. "Ah, yes, my dear young lady, you are quite capable of handling yourself. Given enough time, and left to your own devices, I dare say you would have managed to compromise the integrity of not only every member of your family, but of your maidenhead as well." Charlotte gasped. Her eyes rose to challenge his and found a devilish glint in their smoky depths. His arms banded around her, drawing her closer. She felt the electrifying brush of a sinewy thigh. Indignantly, she tried to pull away, but his body moved easily with hers, and the momentum spun them into a dizzying spiral. Her skirts billowing around them, her arms clung to him, first with fear, then with delicious abandon. The music resonated in her ears, in her pulse. Yes. She closed her eyes, arched her back into the cradle of his powerful arm, and gave herself to the music. She didn't know how long they danced, only that for that brief dreamlike moment she had been spun into a faraway world, free of the burdens of Earnshaw Manor. She never wanted it to end. But it did. She opened her eyes. They had stopped dancing. He was staring down at her, his eyes devoid of warmth. His lips were tight, intensifying the ugly scar. "Be careful, Miss Earnshaw. The world is full of predators." He was her enemy. Furiously, she pulled away from him, as if his very touch scolded her. Breathless, she stood back, her voice shaking with loathing. "Indeed, thank you for reminding me." The music began again, and dancers whirled about them in a dizzying blur as she glowered up at him. "And you, sir, are the most vile predator of all. You prey upon my father." His face was an expressionless mask, as he so richly deserves. "But Africa will kill him." "I care not a whit for your father's worthless life." Charlotte was stunned by the sheer ruthlessness of his words. She stared up past cheekbones as sharp as a knife blade, and saw nothing but hatred in those black eyes. He was certainly the most dangerous man she had ever seen. She could hear her own voice steely with conviction. "Then I shall do everything in my power to stop you." He looked down at her, then suddenly took her hand. He lifted it to his lips, brushing her skin with surprising gentleness as his eyes burned into hers. "I look forward to it, Miss Earnshaw." Violently, she pushed her hand away. She wanted to slap him. She wanted to lash him with her most furious insults. But he had turned, disappearing into the throng of dancers.